Mr. President, for what I'm about to do, I apologize because I know I will be taking you past the normal sitting of the Senate, but I think it is important because we were put here to do the business of the people, and it really doesn't matter what time we conclude the business of the people. I think the business of the people has to be done. Mr. President, you know, it's a curious fact that we're actually gathered here today on the same date that we met last year. We met last year on the 22nd of May, 2014, to debate the estimates of expenditure, and we're actually here on the 22nd of May, 2015. And preparing my presentation, Mr. President, I was actually drawn to a particular quotation, and I'll read that quotation for you. It's taken from a book that I think many of you know. It's Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, and let me read it. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the spring of light. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. Now, Mr. President, those of you who know this literary classic will know that Dickens was actually referring to two cities separated by geography, the cities of Paris and London, during the French Revolution. However, Mr. President, that narrative could also be a tale of two countries, except this time the countries are separated chronologically. One country, between the years of 1997 and 2006, experienced the following. Universal secondary education, with new secondary schools being built in Babonneau, Alger, Piaille, Cicero, Marigot, and Groseilliers. Abolition of the shift system in primary schools and the construction of the Dame Paulette Louisy Primary School. The commencement of construction on the National Wellness Center and the new National Hospital. Refurbishment of 15 health centers island-wide. Free screening for over 8,000 St. Lucians and free eye surgery for over 2,000 nationals in Cuba. Free screening and free antihypertensive and diabetes medication under the UHC pilot diabetes and hypertension program. New playing fields in Mont Cayenne, La Guerre, Rivière-Dennery, Marigot, Bas-Lagrasse. New multipurpose courts in Wavin-Poisson, Vanna, Morchy, Otabor, Morgouge, Balatan, Lacaille. Construction of the Beauséjour Cricket Ground. And the Beauséjour Cricket Ground became the first cricket ground in the Caribbean to host a day-night one-day international cricket match. Construction of the indoor gymnasium and what was later called the George Odlum Stadium. Construction of 7 new HRDCs and 6 new daycare centers. Reconstruction of the Vieux Fort to Soufrière Road. Expansion of the VG to Choc Junction Road. Construction of a new Beauséjour to Bella Rosa Link Road, brand new road, opening up whole new areas of economic activity, increasing the value of the land of people in that area, just like this new four-lane highway will do. Unemployment that dropped to 14% by 2006, dropped to 14%. I'll tell you in a while what it was. A banana industry in which over $140 million was injected. So when I listen to my friend Senator Joseph on the other side speak, I have a wry smile because he knows the truth, but he won't give you all the facts. 3 new IRDCs being built. Input support, concessions for banana cartons, and the clearing of the old SLBGA debt, wiped out completely. Construction of new modern fish landing facilities in Vieux-Fort, Soufrière, Choiseul. A tourism industry where new hotels were built at Cotton Bay, The Landings, Bay Gardens, Beach Resort, Discovery at Marigot, Coco Palm Hotel, and Sandals Grand. New police stations in Anse-Laret, Marcha, and Vieux-Fort. Refurbished police stations in Groseilliers, Marigot, Canaries, Soufrière, Choiseul, and Labrie. And commencement of construction of new stations in the Mabuya Valley and Dennery Village. New fire stations in Dennery, Vieux-Fort, Groseilliers, and Micoud. New sanitary landfills in Desglos and Vieux-Fort. Led the liberalization of the telecommunications sector, which today allows us to have a competitive environment where we have the best of services, best of telecommunication services, competing with anywhere in the world. We led that. Installation of over 8,000 streetlights and something that many people forget, but not the people of Butor, bringing electricity to Butor for the first time. Undertaking flood mitigation projects in Castries, Dennery, Ansley, and Vieux-Fort. That, Mr. President, is the tale of the first country. The country described by Dickens as the best of times, the age of wisdom, the epoch of belief, the season of light, the spring of hope. Then we have the tale of the second country. Same country, but a different period of time. That tale, that narrative, that story is best described by what Dickens says is the worst of times, the age of foolishness, the epoch of incredulity, the season of darkness, the winter of despair. And while I do not want to repeat all of the things, all of the sad, sinister stories that went on during that time, it's important that we revisit some of them, particularly when you hear some of the statements opposite by people who lived and who brought that despair and darkness to us. Constant media breaking reports of cabinet revolts, arrests of government ministers, not minister, ministers, plural, alarming revelations about government MPs, court rulings about illegal cabinet decisions. The court actually ruled that the cabinet acted illegally and that certain cabinet members could not be trusted to tell the truth. That's a court ruling. No new hotels built, no new investments, no new secondary schools, a reversal of positive developments like universal health care, unnecessary dithering about universal secondary education, a banana industry brought to its deathbed by Black Sigatoka, and unemployment back at 21.2%, back where it was in 1997. So you'll understand, Mr. President, that what we have really is a tale of two countries. The best of times, the worst of times. One good, one not so good. So the job of this government, when it took office in 2011, was to recover 5 lost years. And 5 lost years that when you look at in terms of what happened in those 5 years, probably set us back 15 years. Because you will note that before what happened in unemployment, it brought us back to 1997, unemployment levels of 1997. It reversed all of the gains that were made between 1997 and 2006. So when we took office in 2011, we had to start back all over again as if we were doing 1997 all over again. Given that, Mr. President, I'm very proud of what this government has achieved over that period, extremely proud. If I were to spend time, as Senator Minister with responsibility for physical development did, detailing the accomplishments in the Ministry of Infrastructure, I'd be here all night. And you heard me, I spoke of some of them when my good friend Senator Joseph on the other side spoke of Espoir Malpapai, and I told him that if Espoir Malpapai is all of these things that have been done in the Ministry of Infrastructure, then give me Espoir Malpapai any day. If I were to present to the Senate, Mr. President, the achievements of NICE, where over 5,870 jobs have been created over 3 years, I would run out of time. If I were to devote my time to the Constituency Development Program, where in 3 years, 1,404 projects have been executed in 17, not 11 that are run by this government, or not what the other government had, 17 constituencies, over 9,370 jobs created, I would have no time to speak about my ministry. If I were to speak about STEP, where in 2 years has created over 17,000 jobs, 17,000 job placements over 3 years, again, I'd run out of time. I don't have time to tell you about Koudme Setlisi and the 218 persons who've received textbooks, or the 268 clients who received school uniforms. Neither can I tell you about HOPE, Mr. President, which has provided support for 600 beneficiaries through job placements, small infrastructure projects, or sponsorship for health, for sports, for culture, for educational activities. Mr. President, unfortunately, I can't tell you about SMILES, the Single Mothers in Life Enhancement Skills Project, where in 2 years has provided employment and support for more than 250 single mothers island-wide, including opportunities to obtain their CVQ qualifications, which allows them to get a job anywhere in the Caribbean. Time is not on my side, Mr. President. I will tell you about Koudme Setlisi and the 218 persons who received textbooks, or the 268 clients who received school uniforms. Neither can I tell you about HOPE, which has provided support for 600 beneficiaries through job projects. For those on the other side, Mr. President, and we've heard this before, they tell you that this government has no vision. Why do they tell you that? Because we appointed a vision committee on which my good friend Senator King sits. They want to deceive you into thinking that because we established a vision commission where we are taking a multi-sectoral, multi-party, civil society, NGO approach, broad, all-encompassing approach to defining a vision for this country so that everybody can buy into where this country will go. So it doesn't matter who is in power, Labour, UWP, LPM, Green, doesn't matter. We all have one vision of where we take in this country. They'll tell you that because we've done that, we have no policies or plans. But let me tell you what we've done where policies and plans are concerned over the last 3 years. 2012, Cabinet passed a National Electronic Commerce Policy Strategy and Action Plan, a Human Resource Development Policy, and a policy on early childhood services, which I'm sure Senator King is very curious about and would like to know more about. 2013, and you know, we're not sparing anybody, we're equal opportunity policymakers. We're even making policy for the dead. National policy for the establishment, management, and maintenance of cemeteries, piloted by the Ministries of Social Transformation and Physical Development. Because we have a serious problem in this country, running out of space to bury our dead people. Very, very serious problem. And we have to give those who have passed the same dignity that we give to the living, and we can't be burying people one on top of the other, or digging up graves of recently buried people to bury new people. We must have a policy on that. National Information and Communications Technology, ICT policy and strategy, piloted by my ministry. A national partial zoning policy so that we can have proper procedures for how we place our children in secondary schools. A review of the external relations policy of St. Lucia. 2014, a tourism transportation policy. A framework for housing delivery for a national sites and services program piloted by my friend, the Minister of Physical Development. A medium-term debt management strategy, which came to this Senate, and we looked at it, and Senator King has spoken about many times. A St. Lucia tourism development program. A policy and strategic framework for the creative sector, which Parliamentary Secretary Dr. Kentry Japia can speak about. A national investment policy for St. Lucia. And only this year, Mr. President, the year 2015, we've passed a tourism benchmarking and competitiveness assessment strategy and action plan. Ease of doing business strategy, because we recognize it is not right for our ease of doing business ranking to fall so precipitously as it has fallen. And we're falling because other countries are moving forward of where we are. When we, as Senator Japia spoke, when we left office, we were ranked higher than anybody in the Caribbean. Now, we can't hold our place. We have to do something about it. A national policy and strategic plan of action for the renewal of urban centers in St. Lucia, a citizenship by investment policy, a public-private partnership policy framework for St. Lucia, which now allows us to enter into a PPP for UNORA International Airport, a policy which Minister Stanley Felix spoke of to deal with applications for land rectification as it pertains to land registered in the name of the Crown, a national social protection policy and strategic plan of action, a climate change adaptation policy for St. Lucia, and a national human resource for health policy. Now tell me, Mr. President, does that smell, does that look like a government that has no policies, a government that is operating without direction? This government has come up with more policies and developed more of a framework for moving forward than the previous administration did in its 5 years. Very, very clear. But you see, you will not hear about that. What you will hear is a lot of chest beating. And if you check the Hansard, Mr. President, every sitting of Hansard, we've heard the idle and hollow threats on this side. That is your last time here. We are going to see you all here by next month. By October, you're all gone. By October, we're gone in 2012. We're in 2015 now. Come up with a different song. Calypsonians changing the lyrics. Change yours too. Come up with something else. You know, Mr. President, I can't tell you about the positive impact that the home help for the elderly and home repair program for the elderly are having to improve the quality of life of our senior citizens. So, you know, Mr. President, because I don't want to be chastised for speaking too quickly, which very many people quite rightly do, they say I speak too quickly, but you know the reason I speak quickly? Because I'm passionate about what I do. But I also speak quickly because I have a lot of things to talk about. It's not my fault, you know. There's a lot that we're doing. And because I don't have the expanse of time that others have in other chambers where they can speak for 3 hours, I try to get as much possible in a short space of time. So I apologize if I speak too quickly. I will try to breathe and speak a little bit more slowly, but it's difficult when you really care and you're passionate about what you're doing. But Mr. President, in listening to the side on the other side, I was reminded of a quote that sometimes is attributed to Mark Twain or Benjamin Disraeli, where he says there are 3 types of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. And we heard all of them here today. You know, we heard statements, and we have to be careful. Now, Senator King, I know both you and Senator Tobia said this, and I suspect it is because you were told this, but you should have double-checked. And I'm not accusing you of the lies, the damn lies, and statistics. I'm accusing you of not being given the facts. Both of you said that the capital expenditure program for this year of $414,166,800 is the highest in the history of this country. That's not the case. In 2006, 2007, 421,400,000. In 2007, 2008, when the previous administration, its first budget, 552,750,800. 2008, 2009, again in the last administration, 416,477,290. 2011, 2012, their last year in office, 442,425,300. And one you should have remembered because we were here for this one, 2012, 2013, 494,921,000. So we have to be careful what we say. And we have to be careful when we speak about the incapacity of this economy to absorb these projects because we've done this in the past. We've had capital estimates that are higher than what we have right now. So you were probably misled with that, and I know both of you said it. Now, Senator King spoke of, I'll spend a little bit of time rebutting some of the things that were said. This is not a rebuttal. Senator King spoke about St. Lucia Employment Bureau. Good idea. I endorse that 100%. I think it should be done. In fact, in the Labour Party's manifesto, in its blueprint for growth, it spoke about establishing a job placement center, which is akin to what you're speaking about. I would give this 100% support. I think it is one good organic way of dealing with the chronic unemployment problem we have in this country. If we can have an employment bureau where we can go and know what jobs exist, what categories of jobs exist, and we can direct people to those positions. So I support you 100% on this. The Festivals Committee for Jazz and Carnival, you know, I've been following St. Lucia Jazz from its inception. I remember the very first St. Lucia Jazz up to this one. And I watched those hard-working St. Lucia Tourist Board staff. And it's not right, you know, for our Director of Tourism and the Deputy Director of Tourism, for people like Louis Lewis and Tracy Warner-Arnold to be spending so much of their time running a festival. That's not what we're paying them to do, you know. We're paying them to market the country, and they're doing a very good job of it. But for the month, almost for the first half of the year, they ask, and it's not just them, it's other people like Mariage and Hale and all of these other people. All they do is be consumed with jazz, jazz, jazz. From the time February hits, February, March, April, May. I mean, I watched Tracy and I watched Louis on Sunday, and you could see the look of relief on their face because this is finally coming to an end. By Monday and Tuesday, the last set of artists would have left, and they can go back to being with their families and doing their jobs. That's not right. That's not what we have a tourist board to do. We have a tourist board that is supposed to focus on marketing St. Lucia. And we need to free them up of this encumbrance that they have every year, and they've had it for 24 years to manage a jazz festival. Let them do what they're supposed to do, and I'm sure you'll find they'll do an even better job of what they're doing so well right now if we give this Festivals Commission to someone else. And please, let's not denigrate the capacity of our people. The same people who've run a jazz festival so successfully for 24 years, they're not going to Mars, they're going to be here. So they will be able to advise and nurture and direct whoever is on the Festivals Commission. The same set of people who've run Carnival for all these years will be still here. So I have no doubt that whoever is put in place for that Festivals Commission will be able to do just as good a job as the others, because the others will be there to give them advice, and they'll be there to give them advice free of charge. Now, moving on quickly to some of the rebuttals. Now, I'll say something in this Senate I never thought I would say, but you know, I really miss Leonard Spider-Mortooth today. Because had Spider been here, I think some of the howlers I heard on the other side, I wouldn't have heard. I mean, Spider and I, we had our clashes, but one thing you could always trust Spider to do would be to debate, yes, supporting his party line, but debate on what is right for the country. And I can never forget Spider taking, former Senator Mortooth taking positions that you may have thought were contrary to the lines taken by his party, but he did them because he felt those were the right things to do. And you know, Spider, I miss you today, because if you were here, I think there would have been some more common sense prevailing on the other side. Because when I hear that, you know, talk about our unemployment figures and what we've done to unemployment, I've said this in the Senate before, Mr. President. Mr. President, when this Labour government, headed by Kenny Anthony, came into office in 1997, it found unemployment at 21%. It brought it down to 14%. In fact, it went down to 13.6%, and that's a figure quoted by Sir John Compton in his first budget statement by the year 2006-2007. When we came back into office in 2011, that unemployment level had gone back up to 21.2%, an increase of 7.2% in 5 years. Do the maths. It's very simple. 7.2 divided by 5, any common entrance student can tell you that is 1.44% increase in unemployment every year. Very, very simple. We've come in and we found unemployment on a trajectory going that way. Again, anybody who's done mathematics and who's done anything with graphs know that if the graph is going this way, it takes something very drastic to get that graph to go down. You've found that graph on a very steep trajectory. So it is unrealistic to expect this government to come in and take unemployment, which is growing at a rapid rate of 1.44%, and bring it down to zero. That will not happen. What has happened, I will admit to you, is that unemployment has grown under us. Unemployment has grown from 21.2% to 24.4%, an increase of 1.07% per year. 1.44% on the United Workers' Party, 1.07% under us. There is a deceleration of unemployment taking place. It is inescapable. The facts do not lie. But there are other things that we have to look at when we delve very closely into those figures. So, President, the labor force has grown by 8,173 during the period that we've been in office. 8,173 people. Increase in employed people, 3,309. Increase in unemployed, 4,863. Clearly what is happening is that this economy is not growing quickly enough to absorb the increases in our labor force. So you've heard the opposition say things at various stages that, 4,000 people lost their jobs under this government. That is not what has happened. What has happened is that the economy is not growing fast enough to absorb those school leavers, so we have a problem. And the school leavers are the ones swelling the ranks of the unemployed among young people. So what we have to do as a government, what we have to do as a country, because it's affecting all of us, not just affecting Labour government or UWP government, it's affecting all of us. We have to find a way to create employment for these young people. And that's what we're doing with some of the projects that we're implementing, some of the ICT projects that we're implementing, but we'll come to that in a while. Then I heard Senator Mary Isaac speak about appointments in the public service and how appointments in the public service have grown. And, again, we cannot deceive the people of St. Lucia, particularly when there are facts that give you the true picture. And, Mr. President, I will be making this a document of the House because, as you know, every year I produce a report of the operations of my ministries, and that report has figures on what is happening in my various ministries. And there's a table in there that is very instructive and speaks directly to what Senator Mary Isaac spoke of. Table showing staff movements from 2009 to 2014. New appointments, 2009, 230. 2010, 359. 2011, 270. 2012, 263. 2013, 105. 2014, 69. 69 new appointments this year. Last year, 105. Down from the 359 in 2010 when the previous administration was in office, or 2070 their last year in office. And if you go down, if you drill down even further, you will see that the appointments at the highest levels, 19, 20, 21, nothing. But you see, it's very convenient for them to use this deception to make people believe that this government is swelling the ranks of the public service with grades 19 to 21, when that is patently false and incorrect. The facts are there, they can be obtained, and it is incorrect to fool people and to make them believe that that is what is happening. But that's not the only thing that was said there. Senator Isaac said that she referenced 1998, 1999, 1997, 1998, to say that expenditure in education and youth and sports was at a particular level, and this government has reduced expenditure. But again, stop fooling the people. You know why expenditure was high on education in 1998, 1999? Let me tell you why. Why the capital vote was high in 1998, 1999. Construction of the Soufrière Secondary School, $8.1 million. Construction of the Labrie Secondary School, $5 million. Construction of the Babonneau Secondary School, $5.98 million. Construction of the Auger School, $6.2 million. Furniture and equipment for these schools, $2.87 million. Rehab and repair of primary schools, $1.1 million. Now, clearly, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. If you are constructing schools, as this government was doing, in a period where we were trying to introduce universal secondary education and stop this anguish that our primary school children and their parents went through every year with common entrance, where we had to be turning back so many children because there was no place in secondary school for them. Clearly, if you're on an aggressive program of increasing your capital stock, increasing your asset base in your schools, you will have high expenditure in education. And once you have gone past that, the expenditure on capital in education will go down. So to make it look as if in a previous time there was so much money being spent on education and capital, and not say where that money was being spent, that money was being spent to build new schools by this administration. And therefore, now that the schools have been built and we have universal secondary education, we can go back to a more normal set of capital expenditure. That's what you have to say to people. And then she told you about expenditure in youth and sports and why, more money used to be spent on youth and sports before. But you know why again? Construction of the National Cricket Ground, $9.2 million. And again, from the time she said it, I didn't even have to think because I said, but I know what happened in that period. But it is very easy to try to deceive those who do not know what happened in that period and come and present facts. Again, Mark Twain, Benjamin Disraeli, lies, damn lies, statistics. You could use statistics. They say the devil can cite scripture for his own purpose. A politician can cite statistics for his or her own purpose too. And very often, that purpose is not a good one. Then we told that IMF reports that this prime minister has not released IMF reports to the public. Stephenson King didn't release the last IMF report to the public either in your term. So this is not anything new. Prime Minister Stephenson King refused to release his IMF report to the public. So don't make it look as if this prime minister is being deliberately deceptive. He's not. Prime ministers, both former Prime Minister King and this prime minister, have decided that in their own estimation, it is not right, maybe right now, to release the IMF report. That's their prerogative as Minister of Finance and Prime Minister. But don't make it look as if this is a Kenny Anthony sin. It's not. Then we come to my friend Andy Daniel. Now, Senator Daniel, I love Senator Daniel's contributions because he takes me back to a time when everything was lyrical and musical. Now, my good friend, the Minister for Social Transformation and the MP for Sufra will be shocked at what I'm about to do. Because he knows very well that there's a genre of music that he loves and I have difficulty associating with. I'm more an R&B, jazz, reggae, calypso person. But Minister Dalso is a strong country and western man, and we always have this back and forth. Andy said, Senator Daniel said that Senator Isaac's maiden budget presentation reminded him of George Jones, the great country singer George Jones. But you know what? Both her presentation and your presentations reminded me of George Jones. George Jones has a song called Choices from a CD called The Cold Hard Truth. It got him a Grammy Award. And let me read the lyrics on that for you. I'm sure you know it. I've had choices from the day that I was born. There were voices that told me right from wrong. If I had listened, no, I wouldn't be here today. Living and dying with the choices I've made. I guess I'm paying for the things that I've done. If I could go back, oh Lord knows I'd run. That's what your presentations reminded me, that you're paying for the choices you made and you're paying for the bad decisions that you made between 2006 and 2011. So it was good to quote George Jones, because I think George Jones really encapsulates where you find yourself today. But that's not all. I heard references to promises by this government about things that would have been done, and it's all cut and paste. And let me tell you about some of the promises that have taken place in some of the budgets presented by the previous administration. In 2010, former Prime Minister Stephenson King said that Euro 4.3 million would be allocated to an agro-ecotourism program. Haven't seen that yet. On page 37, he said that on page 31. On page 37, he said there'll be a modern juvenile rehabilitation center built. Haven't seen that yet. Page 51, National Employment Bureau, which is what Dr. King just spoke about. Haven't seen that yet. 2009, Prime Minister King said on page 14, the Ritz-Carlton and Black Bay to include a 250-room resort and an 18-hole Arnold Palmer golf course is due to begin this year. Haven't seen that yet. The Raffles and now Point Hardy, a 150-room villa resort, construction to begin this year. That was 2010. Haven't seen that yet. Island Villas, $30 million, 100-unit resort, likely to restart this summer. Haven't seen that yet. Page 22. 6 housing development projects, and I'll ask my friend Minister Felix about that. 6 housing development projects to provide 1,229 residential units in Marigot, Moshi, Crestlands, Balambush, St. Jude, and Ancillary. You've seen that? No. Haven't seen that yet. But it goes back. 2008, former Prime Minister King again, page 16 of his budget statement. Development of a new cruise port at Vieux-Fort. Haven't seen that yet. Expansion of the GFL Charles Airport to cater for Boeing 737-800 aircraft and to establish a fixed base operation. Haven't seen that yet. But listen to the good one. Remember, I'm sure all of you remember this one because there were some very unfortunate, almost morbid scenes that revolved around this one. Hess Oil Refinery to be built in cul-de-sac at a cost of US $7 billion. And we all remember that press conference. Haven't seen that yet. Hotels to be built, Four Bay Resort in Micoud, Trumasse Resort in Micoud, Riverdore Resort in Choiseul, Ritz-Carlton, all in his budget statement in 2008. Haven't seen that yet. Former Prime Minister Sir John Compton, God bless his soul, page 10, he said that a central region tunnel would be built through the Badlil. Haven't seen that yet. He spoke of the establishment of an agricultural marketing and promotion agency on page 16. The same thing that Senator Joseph speaks so eloquently about tonight. Former Prime Minister Sir John Compton, promised this in 2007. If he really was serious, not Sir John, because I think Sir John was very serious about this. If Senator Joseph, as Minister of Agriculture, was very serious and committed to this, then he would have seen that it would have been his duty to fulfill the wish of former Prime Minister Sir John Compton. But you know, there's something else that Sir John Compton said he would have done in 2008. And let me read to you, Mr. President. It comes from page 42. 2007. Thanks for correcting me. He says, the National Economic Council, appointed to advise the government on this matter in April 2005, advised government to adopt a broad-based consumption of value-added tax, VAT, possibly including taxes on services. Madam Speaker, I'm quoting Sir John. Madam Speaker, we have two choices, namely, to keep our tax system unchanged and suffer the consequences of a dwindling tax base, or to reform the tax structure to make it move appropriately to the new global and domestic environment. Madam Speaker, this government has made the latter choice. 2007, as Sir John said this. This government has made the latter choice. This government will seek assistance to advise on the implementation of the VAT and at the same time to remove a host of nuisance taxes, which is what we did with the environmental levy and the cellular tax and what's the other one, the consumption tax. That's what we did. That's what Sir John promised in 2007. I continue to quote him, to remove a host of nuisance taxes which add little to the revenue but are serious impediments to the transaction of business in these modern times. And then Sir John concludes by saying, government aims for the introduction of a value-added tax or VAT within 12 months, that is by May 1st, 2008. Didn't see that. So, you know, it's easy to come here and to try to deceive this House and to make reference to one or two things that may have been promised in 2012 and are being delivered latterly or finally in 2015. But at least they're being delivered. All of these things I pointed out there, not one of them, not the tunnel, not to mention all the golf courses we were promised in 2007, not one of them has materialized. Thank God for the golf courses, because we would not have had any water in this country. Then my good friend Senator Daniel says that Albert Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Newsflash, Einstein never said that. You got your quotation wrong. Albert Einstein had never, ever, ever said that. If you go and you check, they will tell you that that quote has been attributed at various times to Einstein, to Twain, to Disraeli.
Senator, I don't mean to break your stride, but you have 15 minutes left.
45.
Mr. President, I'd beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 35-3. Sorry, I beg to move under Standing Order 35-3 for the suspension of Standing Order 35-1 to give the Honorable Senator Dr. Fletcher another 45 minutes for his presentation.
Senators, the question is that we invoke Standing Order 35-3 to suspend Standing Order 35-1 to allow the Senator an additional 45 minutes in which to conclude his presentation. I now put the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator Joseph, who says it's my last budget statement, so he's being generous to me. He wouldn't stop at all. Mr. President, so I was just reminding Senator Daniel that, again, you have to be careful about the quotations that you attribute, because Albert Einstein never said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And finally, when you quoted Beres, who said, love is never having to say that you're sorry, my thing is very simple. Beres was never married, because no married man would ever say that love is never having to say that you're sorry. You have to say sorry sometimes when you transgress. In fact, if you're not willing to say sorry, it means that you're arrogant and you're pig-headed and you believe that you're always right. So you have to say sorry when it's necessary for you to say sorry. So I don't think that's a good quote. Then, Senator Joseph spoke eloquently and at length about the meat processing facility. I won't say too much about this. I think the meat processing facility is an issue we've gone back and forth over how many times. I think I'm just happy that the meat processing facility is finally being commissioned. I have my concerns, Senator Joseph, because that is a very big and impressive facility, but I do not know that we have the throughput of livestock to push through it, so there must be a very aggressive program to get the livestock program going up again. But even more importantly, Senator Joseph, we must not disenfranchise the butchers who exist in places like Mark and those places who are earning a living. We have to find some way of including them in this new dispensation so that they do not find themselves out of a livelihood because of this meat processing facility. I want to tell Senator Joseph, to contrary to what he may have caused the listening public to believe, I support 100% the decision taken by his government to reverse the decision taken by the previous Kenny Anthony administration to locate the gold project at Union. I said so to Prime Minister Anthony when I was his cabinet secretary. I've said so repeatedly. I think it was an ill-advised decision to put the gold project at Union. Union is one of the most, not only is it very fertile land, although you destroy the fertility by going and put a fish farm in there, so it's no longer fertile land, it's now a pond, but Union is synonymous with agriculture in this country, and we were sending a very bad statement when we said that a place that was synonymous with agriculture would be putting a football project there. So I support, love is never, you said love is what? Never having to say that you're sorry, but I think being a leader means admitting if you make a good decision, and we made a bad decision, to admit it. And admit the decision you made to reverse that decision was a very good decision. I support it 100%. Mr. President, it is incorrect, unfair, disingenuous to make the people of St. Lucia believe that the government, this current government, and the St. Lucia Labour Party, when it was in opposition, did not support the government of the Republic of China, Taiwan. That is incorrect, that is disingenuous, that is false, that is dishonest. What the party led by Kenny Anthony, Dr. Kenny Anthony, said repeatedly was that it was appalled by the way former Ambassador Tom Chu ran the operations of the embassy. And it was also appalled and did not support the funds from the Taiwanese government not going into the consolidated fund. That was stated repeatedly. That is a position that we still hold. And we're very happy that, first of all, Ambassador James Chang is the model ambassador. You could not ask for a more consummate diplomat, a nicer gentleman. I mean, this, for me, is one of the best persons I've ever come across. And that's why you'll find, Mr. President, that on the cover of my report, Ambassador James Chang features on it, because I have so much respect for this man. But I also have a lot of respect for the government and people of the Republic of China, Taiwan, because they have put so much of their own tax resources into this country. But what our Prime Minister and Minister of Finance has done is ensure that every time Ambassador Chang gives a check, there's somebody from the Treasury to receive it and hand over a receipt. That never happens. So what you find is that the estimates for the period 2006 to 2011 are misleading because they do not reflect the large sums of money that came into the government of the United Workers' Party from the Taiwanese government. And instead, what you have, where is it, Stanley? The constituency report. What you have, however, is this: a review of the financial operations of town, village, and rural councils, which is a direct result of those monies not going into the consolidated fund. And that's what we did not support. We never said we do not support Taiwan. What we did not support was the way in which Ambassador Chu was conducting operations and the business of the government of Taiwan here in St. Lucia. And finally, Senator Joseph speaks about the banana industry being in decline. And, again, you have to give people all the facts. Let me tell you what has happened to banana production in the Windward Islands. Grenada stopped producing bananas long. In 2008, Dominica was producing 8,287 tons of bananas for the year. St. Lucia produced 38,375 tons. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 8,433 tons. 2013, fast forward. Dominica produced 1,442 tons, down from 8,287. St. Lucia produced 12,376 tons. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 185 tons. Right now, only one country, Mr. President, only one country in the Windward Islands, St. Lucia, is exporting bananas to the UK. St. Lucia is the only one left. I agree with Senator Joseph wholeheartedly. There is still a place for the banana industry in this country. And you know what? I agree with you wholeheartedly that Windfresh is a problem. Windfresh needs to be revamped. Windfresh's focus needs to be changed. And I've said so to Windfresh repeatedly. I've said so to the managing director of Windfresh. I've said so repeatedly. There are issues with Windfresh that have to be resolved. Windfresh, there's a friction between the farmers, and it's not just the farmers in St. Lucia, but the farmers around the Windwards with Windfresh. That is not helpful, and it is not helping the banana industry move forward. Windfresh also needs to ensure that it never loses its focus on the farmers of the Windward Islands, because the reason we have a Windfresh today is because of the farmers of the Windward Islands, and in its quest now to be self-sufficient, it cannot abandon these farmers in other pursuits. So I agree with you 100% on that one. Windfresh has to be refocused on what is its core business, which is supporting the farmers of the Windward Islands in bananas, in coconuts, in cocoa, in guava, in all of the crops that we can produce. And finally, Senator Joseph made a big fuss about the fact that the BAM, the name of the BAM was changed. Well, of course the name of the BAM had to be changed, Senator Joseph. The BAM is Banana Accompanying Measures. That's the name that the EU gave to a measure. It's like Stabex. You couldn't call your banana rehabilitation program a Stabex program or an SFA program. It's a banana transformation program. BAM is what they call the mechanism that they're using to disburse funds to these former countries that were producing bananas. So to call your program the BAM, I mean, you know, that's as bad as what we've seen happen in St. Lucia, where the fish landing facility in Dennery is called the Daito, because Daito was the engineers out of Japan that did the consulting on it. That fish landing facility in Dennery should be named after a prominent Dennery fisherman, and I'm sure you agree with me, Senator Daniel. It shouldn't be called the Daito. It should be named after a prominent, and it's the same thing when you call your banana transformation program the BAM, which is what, if the BAM means that it's the same BAM in Dominica, it's the same BAM in St. Vincent, you can't call it the BAM. So come on. But let's move on, because I'll never have time to talk about what my ministry is doing, including getting to something that he stopped me from going up to the washroom on, which is the John Compton Dam. Mr. President, public sector transformation is something that we've been very aggressive about. We launched a digitization center in January last year. It's now fully operational. 80% of the documents of national or government interest have now been scanned, and we've been able to send 67 boxes of scanned documents up to the National Archives. So very soon, you will be able to index and retrieve these documents digitally rather than having to go and, go through endless dusty files. That is something that this government is doing to make information more accessible, not just to public officers, but to members of the public. An internet exchange point, that was launched in February of 2014. What it does is that it localizes all of your internet traffic. I'm sure I've said this in the Senate before. What we had before was something that is analogous to you wanting, if you, Senator King, wanted to travel from Castries to Vieux Fort, there is no road that links Castries and Vieux Fort. So what you'd have had to do is to take a plane from Castries, maybe go to Barbados, from Barbados go up to Miami, and from Miami take a plane down to Vieux Fort. That's what was happening to our internet traffic. Internet traffic was going from one point in St. Lucia up to Miami and back down to the other point. We've set up an internet exchange point, one of only 4 countries at the time in the Caribbean who did it. So what it's doing now is it's routing all of local traffic locally. So it makes local communication faster, but it should also reduce the cost of that communication. And the traffic on that IXP is growing. When we set it up, it was only 1.2 megabytes of traffic. Now it's 24 megs of traffic that's going through that site. And Digicel has now joined the St. Lucia Internet Exchange Point together to joining Lime and Flow. And there are discussions ongoing right now with Google and Akamai so that they would also join the St. Lucia Internet Exchange Point. The Integrated Contact Center, Mr. President, was operationalized last year. It has been a resounding success. And I'm sure you've heard some of the talk shows and some of the people on the media speak about this. This is a 311 number that when you call, you get information on government, not the sort of frustrating thing that I think Senator Tobias spoke about, being routed to different people trying to get someone. This is one stop where they backed up by a database and they can give you information on everything that you would require. The other thing they've been doing is they've been making callbacks. So they will call you back and tell you when your driver's license is ready to be picked up. So if you went to a Ministry of Infrastructure for a driver's license, you couldn't pick it up that day because there was they will actually call you back and say, Ms. Tobia, your driver's license is ready. You could pick it up at the Ministry of Infrastructure. And they've been doing that for driver's licenses, for birth certificates. Between January and May of this year, they handled 9,195 inbound calls. And they made 10,877 calls out. And one thing, Mr. President, they're bilingual. They speak to you in English or Creole, whichever is your more comfortable language. And that will be rolled out to all of the government agencies before the end of this year. And the average speed of answer, which I'm sure Senator Senator Powell would like to hear, is 6 seconds. They respond within 6 seconds. That is documented. There are statistics there to prove that. And the rate of calls answered, 97% of the calls that have been coming in have been answered. There have been some drop calls and some people who've hung up, 97%. We've also implemented, Mr. President, taxi filing, so you can now file your taxes online. What you still cannot do is make your payments online, which is something that is still being worked out, I think, between the Ministry of Finance and Bank of St. Lucia, but that should come soon. Fleet monitoring and tracking, we've installed the GPS devices on 89% of government vehicles. So it means now that I or anybody who has access to this desktop can now tell you where any government vehicle is. I can go on my computer now and tell you where any government vehicle is. I can tell you whether it is stationary. I can tell you whether it is idling. I can tell you whether it is in Viewfort, in Balka, Asu Canal. I can tell you how long it stayed there. I can tell you whether it was idling in one spot for 3 hours. I can give you all of that information. I can also tell you whether there were any extreme events. So braking, that the vehicle broke, the driver tapped the brakes very suddenly, or there was some harsh cornering that takes place. It gives you all of that information. But not only are we installing it in government central agency vehicles, but some of our statutory agencies like Invest St. Lucia Bureau of Standards, SALCC, South Louis Community College, St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority, St. Lucia Tourist Board, St. Lucia Fish Marketing Corporation, and the Cashmere City Council have all indicated an interest to be part of the system. Free Wi-Fi, Mr. President. We established a free Wi-Fi zone in Soufrière last year, spanning a quarter-mile radius within the Soufrière Community Access Centers, which means that visitors and residents can now access free Wi-Fi in Soufrière 24/7 from their smartphones, their tablets, their computers. And I'll give you an example of daily usage between April 20th and May 17th to show you the impact that it is having. April 20th to 26th, Mr. President, 1,328 distinct clients for that week, 576 daily average of persons. Between April 27th and May 3rd, and you know what happened in Soufrière between April 27th and May 3rd, Jazz, Jacquior, Soufrière, 1,744 distinct clients, daily average of 666. And I can almost assure you that that number went up from that little period around that May Day weekend when everybody congregated in Soufrière. So it is working, and it is working very well. We also did an open data readiness assessment, and I'm sure many senators would like to hear about this. We are looking at the possibility of making data readily available in its raw format to members of the public. So not just the PDF log files, but you will now get access to Excel spreadsheets, Senator King, on health data, on education statistics. So you can now go in, manipulate the data, and present it in your reports. This data should not just be the preserve of government, it has to be the preserve of the public so that you can now make decisions. And there are also economic opportunities available in there that we are pursuing. Now, clearly, there's some sensitive information that will not be made available through this open data. So things like people's medical records or criminal records, some things will remain sacrosanct and will not be made available, but this open data will take us one step. And we're actually the first country in the Caribbean to take part in this open data and open budget readiness assessment. And the World Bank has said that St. Lucia is very, very much on the path to having an open data system. Quickly, Mr. President, moving forward, during the financial year, there were over 5,000 public officers trained and sensitized for the implementation of a new performance appraisal system. I spoke earlier about staff appointments and acting appointments. Those of you who are interested, when you get your report, as you will before the end of today's sitting, you will see how many staff appointments were made between 2009 and 2014, how many acting appointments, how many promotions, how many transfers, how many resignations, how many terminations. Actually, in 2013, the Public Service Commission actually terminated 2 people on the basis of disciplinary measures. There's a new leave management system that we're implementing. We completed a learning needs assessment in the St. Lucia Public Service so that we can determine the training that officers go on based on the needs of the agencies. Not what you have right now, where you have a shopping list and people say, I want to do A, B, C, D, E, and A, B, C, D to Z gets on a priority list. We are doing a learning needs assessment. We had support from the Caribbean Leadership Project, and the Ministry of the Public Service will very soon be putting out the results of this. Moving along very quickly, the Organizational Development Division did a lot of work in dealing with sick buildings and relocating. And one promise they allowed me to keep, which was very, very dear to my heart. At a rally for preschoolers at Independence in 2013, I think it was, Mrs. Gustav, the previous head of the Early Childhood Education Unit, she put me on the spot in front of a cultural center full of preschoolers, and she said, and the minister will make sure that we move to new headquarters this year. Right, Mr. Minister? And all the children said, yay! We didn't do it in 2013, but we've now done it. So the Early Childhood Education Unit now has new spacious facilities at Leclerc, and I'm happy that I can now look those preschoolers in the eye and say that I fulfilled the promise that I made in 2013. Mr. President, the negotiations unit is very pleased to have concluded negotiations with all members of the St. Lucia Trade Union Federation. All these collective agreements have been signed. So for the first time in a long time, we actually have collective bargaining agreements signed months before their expiration. In fact, during the course of the triennium, as opposed to what you normally get, which is a collective bargaining agreement going right down to the wire, people threatening strike action and everything. That does not happen, and I want to salute the government negotiating team and the hard-working members of the negotiations unit for concluding negotiations with everybody except the CSA and the National Workers Union. The other thing we've done, Mr. President, is that we have now increased the retirement age for persons who joined the service after 2003. So we've amended Staff Order 9.3 that allows for persons who joined the service after 2003 and who are already paying an NIC, they will be getting their pension from NIC. They will retire at the same point that NIC pensioners retire and not the age 55 that public servants retire. There's a tweaking that we'll have to do for policemen and firemen because clearly it'll be a challenge, and I'm sure Minister Lacobinier will admit, it'll be a challenge for a 65-year-old fireman to climb a ladder. And you don't want your firemen at that age, or some of your policemen who've worked for so long, you don't want to tell them that they have to retire at age 65. So we have to make adjustments for the people who work in our discipline forces, our protective services, so that they can retire at an earlier age and they are not forced to work at a point where they're no longer as productive. JS has been doing a lot of work to revamp its lineup, change its programming, and I think we are starting to see the evolution of a new government information service. And as the year goes by, you will see new things coming on board. The priorities this year for the Ministry of Public Service Information and Broadcasting, we're going to commission the Unified Communication System, which means that we will no longer be paying Lime $100,000 a month for an antiquated PBX that we've been paying them for years and years and years, and we've probably paid the price of it how many times over, and it does not allow you to do voice over IP. It does not allow you to do video conferencing. We're replacing that with a brand new unified communication system that will allow you to sit at your desk and do video conferencing with anyone within the public service who has that IP phone on their desk, and hopefully, in the near future, do it with people in the missions so that I can now sit at my desk and communicate with Ambassador Ambali in New York or High Commissioner Hilaire in London without incurring any additional costs, or do a video conference with them. That will be coming. We are starting the implementation of island-wide Wi-Fi. We signed an agreement with the Taiwanese government. We will do it through our GINet, Government Integrated Network Program, that will see 70 new hotspots, Mr. President, established all around the island. That's the first stage. So something that I think might have been Senator Isaac who spoke of, that will allow that net to be broadened so that those children who are going home and they may not have access to Wi-Fi at home, they will still have access to Wi-Fi within some major community center or hotspot in their area, which should make it a lot easier for them. We're also implementing a library ICT program with the Ministry of Education, which will see 14 libraries, 14 of the 17 libraries island-wide getting a complete retrofit, brand new computer equipment, ICT equipment, and also being given free Wi-Fi so that in our libraries, we can now start converting our libraries into ICT centers and into better learning environments. We are in the process of completing the Viewfort South, Larry Seuss, Canneries, Belmont Dennery, and Mico Community Access Center. So those are brand new community access centers that are being brought on stream, and within the next, I would say, 4 months, these are new community access centers that will come on, and they will complement what we already have in Soufrière. We hope to host an ICT fair and summer camp in August so that we can bring students on board and do some of the mobile app development that I think was spoken about earlier for the creative industries, and get our young people, because you see, that's where the new frontier of employment has to be. One of the reporters asked me, I think it might have been Miguel Favre asked me during the week about what advice would I give to young people who are looking for employment in the public service. And I have to say to him that public service cannot continue growing ad infinitum. You can only bring in new people in the public service to offer a service to the public. You can't populate the public service with people just for the sake of providing employment. What the government has to do is to find ways to create new spheres of economic activity. And the ICT sector does that, because I don't see any reason why the next Instagram or Snapchat or something can't be developed by Dr. King's son or Mr. Joseph's daughter. St. Lucians have that ability. What we have to do is to give them the infrastructure, give them the training, give them the access, and they can now be on that highway, not downloading videos from YouTube, but putting their material on the internet and offering it for sale. And that is what this government is doing. And that is the sort of transformational stuff that I'm sure that Senator King spoke about in his presentation today. We hope to be disbursing the first set of training grants under the Business Incubation and Training Grants component of CASEP, which is making grant money available to young people for training in ICT, but also for new startups in ICT. And again, you are a little too old, I think, to qualify for it, but if you know any young people who can qualify for these business incubation and training grants, then direct them our way. I'm just joking. There's no age limit. Anybody can qualify. Mr. President, we're commissioning a new public service training institute at Union. What used to be the old Spinners building will now be the new public service training institute, fulfilling a promise we made in our manifesto, and that will be the hub of training for our public officers so that we can retool them and give them the skills that they need to be able to provide a better service. And on that score, we'll be doing training for all of the ministries in strategic planning, and we've partnered with the Afra Lockjack Graduate School of Business to roll that out in all our ministries very soon, so that all of our ministries will now have business plans and strategic plans that will show what their mission is, what their vision is, what are their key deliverables, so they have something to work towards. We're initiating a coaching program for senior managers in the public service, and we'll also be doing additional training for our drivers on protocol. Mr. President, there's one very serious issue that we have to resolve, and we have to pay much better attention to. That's a succession planning in the public service. Over the next 6 years...
Senator, I just want to bring to your attention, in case you're not aware, it's raining, huh?
I know.
So
it always happens, you know, Mr. President. Once I declare a water-related emergency, it rains. And that's good news. I'm very happy for this. Just hoping that it's raining profusely around the dam. In the next 6 years, Mr. President, 394 public officers will be retiring. 54 this year, 59 next year, 84 in 2017, 65 in 2018, 72 in 2019, 60 in 2020. That's going to have a very profound impact on some of the ministries. So we have to look at succession planning to ensure that there are people who can fit in. And the Ministry of Agriculture, as Senator Joseph would know, was decimated by this some time ago when you had a group of guys who all trained, well, guys and ladies who all trained at the same time they left. And the same thing is going to happen in forestry very soon, where all of the forestry guys will be leaving at the same time. And the opportunities for training are not what they were back then. So it is a matter that my ministry will be working very closely with the various agencies to ensure that we deal with succession planning much better than we've been doing it. Mr. President, there are two exciting programs that we will be initiating this year that I'm sure you, the Clerk of Parliament, and everybody else who's a public officer would like to know. Cabinet has given us the approval to undertake and to put in place an employee assistance program. We have a lot of public officers in the public service who have some very serious stresses dealing with, and they do not have an institutional structure to help them deal with it. And what very often happens is that these people manifest their problems at work. They are now treated as outcasts, and people, and nobody gets to the bottom of what might be causing the problem. And we believe that as a caring public service, we need to provide that service. So we'll be providing intake counselors and counselors in a very confidential environment, not in your normal public service office, where we'll be making a service available to our public officers who want to avail themselves of this employee assistance program so that they can get support. Because you see, Mr. President, stress is a very serious thing. And our country does not treat with stress and mental illness the way it ought to. And we do not understand that mental illness is like any other physical ailment. Your brain, and I'm sure Senator King will bear me out on this, your brain is an organ in your body just like your heart, just like your pancreas, just like your liver. And your brain can have a problem just the same way your pancreas or your kidneys or your heart can. It's just that in our society, we believe that once there's a problem with somebody's brain, that there's something mystical or superstitious associated with it, and we do not allow those people to get the kind of support that they require. And that's why, Mr. President, you know, this talk, this very shameful and depressing talk about linking suicides with politics, what is happening is that we have people with problems who do not have an avenue to share those problems, who do not have an avenue to get assistance to help them through their difficult periods. Everybody goes through these problems. It's just that some people don't have the support structures around them to help them deal with it. And we think it is incumbent on us as a public service to provide that support to our officers. That's the first thing. Second thing we want to do, Mr. President, is start an after-school program for children of officers who work on the waterfront. Mr. President, I don't have any young children. I don't have any children before anybody thinks I have an old child somewhere. But, you know, I think it's a little sad that we take children, parents have to go and take them after school and put them to sit in a corner and tell them, don't move. That's not a 3, 4, 5-year-old child who's been running around in school active all day long. You can't confine this child to a chair in an office and tell that child, don't move for the next hour and a half. That's against what the child is supposed to be doing at that period. But by the same token, you can't have that child running around because it's disruptive to the office. So what we've done, what we will be doing, and I've spoken to my permanent secretary and my DPS about it, there's some space that should be becoming available on a ground floor within the waterfront. We want to convert that to an after-school program for the children of officers so that they can take their children and have them there in a cared environment with retired teachers who can take care of these children between 3 and 4:30, so their parents don't have to worry about where their children are, and they can go and pick them up, and then it will increase their productivity and release them of that headache of what to do with my child during that period. And that is something that, again, I think a caring service does. GIS, one of the things I've been speaking to GIS about, and I want to thank Janine Compton and Antoine for this idea. You know, our differently able, we do not pay sufficient attention to them. And we do not sometimes recognize the fact that they are blocked out from some of the services we provide. So I've said to GIS that I want them in this coming year to look at sign languaging and closed captioning for all of our news breaks. So somebody who's hearing impaired, watching television, can hear what Marilyn is saying to them just as easily as what Fernell is saying to them, or what Gina Cornell or Alicia Ali is saying, because there'll be somebody signing and there'll be closed captioning on GIS, on NTN, and that is something that we believe is extremely important. Mr. President, moving very quickly, we will be establishing new community access centers this year in Ancillary, Choiseul, Labrie. That's in addition to the ones I've told you that are in train, but through a transfer that we'll be getting from ECTEL, we expect to set up new community access centers in Ancillary, in Choiseul, in Labrie, Vieux-Fort North, Monchy, Castries East, Castries Central, Castries South, Dennery North, Dennery South this year. And what we will not be doing is putting new buildings, but what we will be doing is retrofitting existing HRDCs and existing community centers and converting them into full-scale community access centers with computers, with whiteboards, with projectors, with everything that you would have in a new built community access center. Mr. President, I could not agree more with Senator King about the Broadcasting Authority bill. I know that the Director of Legislative Drafting and the Legislative Drafting Unit is pressed, but if there are 3 pieces of legislation I want from them this year, they are, 1, the Broadcasting Authority Bill and Regulations. We need to have some order and regulation and standards in the media in St. Lucia. And I'm not saying this lest I be misconstrued to be impinging on people's press freedom or anything like that, but you cannot have an unregulated media in St. Lucia as you have right now. We will have a Broadcasting Authority bill. That bill was sent to the Media Association of St. Lucia 2 years ago. They made some comments on it. That bill, I've told the AG, I want that bill passed this year. The other 2 are bills to do with energy, which I'll come to. Moving quickly along to energy, Mr. President, we did an Energy Partners Forum in June 2014. We are moving aggressively for our geothermal energy development. And, you know, again, I'm disappointed in Senator Isaac. For Senator Isaac to link invaluable support that we're getting from the government of New Zealand, and by the way, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the government of New Zealand, who is pictured on this cover, signing this agreement with me in Samoa last year that made available over 2 million EC dollars worth of support to the government of St. Lucia for geothermal exploration. And New Zealand has also embedded in my ministry a technical officer to say that because we're getting support from the government of New Zealand, and New Zealand is a place where there are earthquakes, that we have to worry about earthquakes in St. Lucia. That is the most absurd, ludicrous, illogical. That is what she said. If you go and you check Hansard, that is precisely what she said. I checked it. The reason there are earthquakes in New Zealand, Mr. President, is because New Zealand sits on a major active fault zone known as the Pacific Ring of Fire. So that's like saying to me that if we're getting support from Indonesia, we have to be worried about tsunamis, if I had to take that logic to its logical conclusion or illogical conclusion. We cannot, for the sake of scoring cheap political points, spit in the face of the people who are providing us with support. And whenever I'm here and I hear this sort of stuff, I will push back against it with everything that I have. Because we work too hard to go out there and get our development partners to buy into what we're doing for people who should be interested in moving this country forward to score cheap political points by saying these things. But anyway, let's move along before I spend too much more time on this. We've started geotechnical explorations, we're doing community meetings, and we should be doing another donors consultation because we believe that we have the potential to get as much as 30 megawatts of geothermal energy from Soufrière. Once we've done that, then that's half of our peak demand that we can deal with. Waste to energy, as I think Senator King spoke about that, we're putting out soon requests for proposals with the Carbon War Room, and that is very important for us, not just about creating energy, but dealing with our solid waste problem. And we also want, Senator King, to pass this refundable containers bill, which will put a value on these plastics so that we can now have these plastics that are littering and really causing an eyesore. We can now have these plastics dealt with differently. The wind farm, Senator Isaac said, I couldn't really understand what she was saying when she spoke about the wind farm, saying that she wants to know who the investor is or whether we're leasing the land. But I would have thought that you'd be happy that we're leasing the land and that you're not selling the land. I would have thought that it makes more sense to not sell the land and have the investor lease the land. In any event, the land is not even Crown lands. It's a private transaction. This investor from Texas, a company called Wintex, has entered into its own arrangements and is leasing land to put up a 12-megawatt wind farm, which will make St. Lucia have one of the largest wind farms in the Eastern Caribbean. We're also doing a grid integration study, again with Carbon War Room, that will allow us to answer some questions about how much intermittent energy we can put on our grid, and people who want to put solar PV panels on their roofs, how much of that they can put. So right now the cap is 5 kilowatts for domestic and 25 for commercial. This will tell us exactly at what point we can cap it, and I'm sure it'll be more than the 5 or the 12. For the domestic, 5 is okay, but for commercial, 25 is not enough. But I will sound a warning here as I've sounded before. This government will not allow people who can afford to pay the electricity bill to go independent of the electricity grid. So we will not put this cap at a point where any of our hotels can flood their rooftops with solar and they will no longer have to be taking electricity off Lucelec. Because if that happens, you know what happens, Mr. President? That happens. It means that the cost of Lucelec's infrastructure now has to be borne by the poor people who cannot afford to put solar PV on their rooftops. So we have to find some balance that will allow those who can afford to benefit from this, but will not cause an unfair burden to now be transferred to the poor people of this country. We've also removed and reduced import duties on hybrid and electric vehicles, and now you find that there are more electric vehicles around the place, and we want to encourage more hybrid and electric vehicles because that really is the way to go. And replacing streetlights, Lucelec has taken the lead on this. I was joking to my wife 2 days ago, and I told her I was driving in the city of Castries. I hadn't done that in a while, Senator Felix, although I'm a Castries boy. And I realized I could drive around Castries and switch my lights off because it was so bright with these LED lights that had been put up. I mean, very, very bright. And we're planning on doing that around the island with Lucelec, working with Lucelec. So that will cause government's energy bill, electricity bill to go down by, we believe, as much as $4 million. Finalizing the National Utilities Regulatory Commission bill and the Electricity Supply Services bill. And while I'm on this, I want to say something, express my disappointment with a recent decision taken by Lucelec. Lucelec, I think, yesterday said that, and I understand why they want to do it, because there are people who are squatting on private lands who are asking for connections. And the owners of these private lands are saying to Lucelec, if you connect these people who are squatting illegally, I will sue you, because these people have no right to be squatting on my land, and you have no right to connect them. So Lucelec is in a bit of a quandary. We had a similar problem with water, and we resolved it because we said water is life. Whether people are squatting or not, give the people their water connection. So Lucelec's way of dealing with this is by saying that you have to go to the land registry, get a land register document, and you have 1 day to go to Lucelec and present that land register document to Lucelec to prove that that land belongs to you. Now, come on. 1 day is not sufficient time. You cannot tell somebody that they have to complete this transaction in 1 day. I understand that land changes hands quickly, but certainly not to the point where you're going to put a 1 day turnover on it. And I believe that this should be moved to 1 month, and I've been speaking to the Minister of Physical Development on whose responsibility the land register falls, and he believes that 1 month is also a reasonable period of time. So I'll be writing to Lucelec to tell Lucelec, please revisit that decision. 1 day is absurd. You cannot tell, and every time, what, it costs $10 for the document? So if that document expires after 1 day, you have to now go and get another document and another document. I mean, come on. That's not common sense. And I know Lucelec usually means well, and they usually try to do things properly, but they made a real out on this one. So that's not right. Mr. President, our plans for energy for this year, we want to continue with plans to build a 12-megawatt wind farm, publishing RFPs for waste to energy, continuing the test for geothermal, mobilizing funds for geothermal, and we will be installing solar PV panels. We've already installed them, actually, on the headquarters of NEMO, on the Wellness Center headquarters, on the Wellness Center, and we will be installing solar PV panels on Government House, so Her Excellency can now be a model of green energy in this country. And I've spoken to Her Excellency about it. She's very enthusiastic, and that will be done, again, at no cost to the government of St. Lucia. We'll be undertaking LED retrofits. You're not good, you know. You're not good. We'll be undertaking LED retrofits in the General Post Office. Something you'll be happy to know, Mr. President, this Parliament building is set for LED retrofits, so we'll be changing the lights to LEDs, reducing the cost, and you'll say Mr. President can afford it too. The High Court building, Ministry of Infrastructure, and the Graham Lucy building. Mr. President, moving very quickly to Wasco. Wasco, it's still raining, which is good, Wasco has done a lot of work this past year, Mr. President. Wasco is continuing work on reducing its non-revenue water. Non-revenue water, which is the water that Wasco produces and it does not get paid for, accounts for 56% of Wasco's water. So what that means is for every 100 gallons of water Wasco produces, it only gets money, it only gets paid for 44 gallons. 56 gallons is lost all over the place. Some of you would have listened to me, those of you not tired of seeing me on TV, would have listened to me deliver the address on the declaration of a water emergency and heard me say that Wasco's engineers were repairing 13 leaks on the raw water line from the John Compton Dam to the Fibbles treatment plant. Those 13 leaks, by repairing them, Wasco is saving 700,000 gallons of water a day. That's 700,000 gallons of water that were being lost as a result of leaks along that line. And that is the problem for a lot of Wasco's aging infrastructure. Wasco has said to me, for example, Senator Powell, that the line between Rodney Bay and Cap Estate and Groseley is so bad that the reason residents in that area are not getting water is not because they can't put the water on the system, you know. But if they put the water on the system, it all goes. And once they can repair that line, then the water woes of the north will probably be a thing of the past. And they know that if they put water there, people will take it, and people will pay for it. So these are some of the decisions that Wasco has to make. Wasco is now meeting its monthly payments to Lucelec. As when I became Minister of Responsibility for Wasco, every other month I had to go to PM, the Prime Minister, who was the Minister of Finance, say, PM, please, Lucelec is threatening to disconnect Wasco. Can you pay the bill? The tariff that you spoke about, that tariff has helped Wasco meet those costs. And not only is Wasco meeting its monthly costs to Lucelec, Wasco is paying down on its arrears to Lucelec, and Wasco has to be commended for that today. Cabinet also took a decision to wipe out Wasco's debt from infrastructure, so Wasco now has a clean balance sheet that will allow it to go to institutions like the CDB to raise the financing that's required for the John Compton Dam. Mr. President, moving very quickly to the John Compton Dam. Now, Senator Joseph said that he's disappointed in me. But you see, the desilting of the John Compton Dam, Senator Joseph, is a complex matter. You're talking about a dam that is supposed to hold 3 million cubic meters of water. 1.5 million cubic meters of that is silt. And it's not just silt. It's silt, it's logs, it's trees, it's all sorts of things. We couldn't just move in there like mad people and start taking this out because Desilting that dam is like doing open heart surgery. You have to keep that patient alive. You have to keep the water flowing the same time you're desilting the dam. Otherwise, you're compromising the entire water supply to the north of the island. When Wasco looked at this, it realized, whoa, this is way beyond our capacity. We've never done anything like this before. Let's do this thing properly so that we do not find ourselves in a situation where you now have compromised the dam completely and we don't have water available to go to the people of the north. So we engaged the CDB, engaged the Germans, did a complete study. That study has been completed, and they now have submitted to WASCO a proposal for the desilting of the dam, which the CDB has accepted. So the procedure now is that we've done the pre-qualification for contractors for the rehabilitation. Those were issued, 6 submissions were received. These will be evaluated in the last week of May this month. A short list of contractors will be produced, and thereafter invitations will be sent out for proposals to be received by June. We expect that the CDB board will receive the project by July of this year so that we can have an award of contract in the 3rd quarter of this year so we can meet the end of the rainy season. What we plan on doing is excavating, as I think I've said in the Senate before, that immediate area in the front of the dam so that we can expose the second water port, because there are 2 ports through which you extract water to go to Thibbles. The first port is okay. The second port is all clogged up. If we can expose that port and remove all the silt around it, you'll have a column of water that you did not have access to before. So a lot of the headaches that we're having now about availability of water, you would have dealt with it. So we are excavating from the spillway going back. So, and that is, it's a process that will take a lot of time. But the other reason we could not rush as fools into this, Senator Joseph, is you would understand that just the cost of transporting that silt will be more expensive than the desilting of the dam, with the trucks going up and down there. And that road, as you know, was not meant to accommodate trucks moving up and down with silt. So we have a different solution that will allow the dam to be desilted in a much better manner that will not compromise on the integrity of the water. Vieux Fort Water Supply Redevelopment Project, that's been finalized. The money is in the budget. That's CDB. Vieux Fort will finally have access to water. So I know people like our friends at Coconut Bay, who are perennially confronted with this problem, and other developments in Vieux Fort. Vieux Fort can now become that frontier for development that we've been promising for so long, but which has been constrained by the water. Dennery, the people of Dennery have suffered with water for years and years and years. The people in the Dennery Valley, I mean, when you look at the kind of water that flows out of their taps, it's a shame, because during a drought, they have no water. When it rains, they have brown water that they can't use. Through the assistance of the government of Mexico, we will now be finally dealing with that water problem in Dennery, so we will have no more water issues in Dennery once that project is done. And I promise the MP for Dennery North, Minister Sean Edward, that would be done before I leave office, and we are delivering on this. Deriso Miku project comprises the construction of an intake and enhancement of treatment plant and facility. No, he's not happy because he knows that's a final nail for him. We're in the final stages of the bid evaluation process, and the contract will be awarded soon. Water Resources Management Agency is working very hard. Mr. President, I'm very happy about the rain, as you've been pointing out to me, because you know what? The water levels in Maki and Wavin Poisson and Roseau are at the lowest levels ever. Lowest levels going back to 2010, even go back to the drought. What we're seeing in the Maki River, 11.2 liters per second. I mean, there's hardly any water flowing in that Maki River. Wavin Poisson, 24.7 liters per second. Roseau, the water levels are below what you'd get at the end of the dry season. We need that rain, and we need it desperately, because this situation is not a good one. Our priorities for 2015, installation and commissioning of flood early warning systems in Anseray Canneries and Castries in Marshall. Quickly, Mr. President, environmental management, protected areas management. Last year, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the elevation of our pitons to World Heritage status. The government, the cabinet also endorsed the limits of acceptable change study. We did a successful submission to the World Heritage Committee. And I know there was a petition circulating recently on Facebook about some plan that government was involved in to allow land to be sold and development to go on. As I said, government can't stop any private transaction, any private land transaction. Somebody wants to sell their land, there's nothing government can do to stop them from selling the land. What the government can do, if it wants, is to move in and acquire the land if it doesn't want that land, but it can't prevent a private transaction. But what it can do is say to whoever owns the land, either now or prospective, that there is a limit to what you can do with that land, and that is what the Ministry of Physical Development will do, and that is our job to protect the sanctity of that World Heritage Site, which we will do. So I want to give people the assurance that I didn't work so hard to go to St. Petersburg, Russia, and save the pitons from danger listing as a result from decisions that were taken by the previous administration to now allow all of that hard work to be swept aside by poor decisions by our own government. Climate change, Mr. President, we continue to play a leading role within CARICOM and small island developing states on climate change, and I thank most humbly the senators in this chamber and also those in the other chamber, the MPs in the other chamber, who thank me for the work that I'm doing. But the work that I'm doing really is standing on the shoulders of hardworking people in my ministry, people like Don Pierre Nathaniel and Crispin Dovey and others who preceded them, like Naranda Maurice and Alma Jha and now Susanna Scott. These are the people doing the heavy lifting, and I just come in as a minister and give them support. But they really have done an excellent job in championing St. Lucia's cause and championing the cause of small island developing states. Mr. President, the DVRP, the Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project, we've allocated $5 million in there that will be disbursed through the St. Lucia Development Bank that will be available to private individuals for energy retrofits, so those who want to put solar PV panels on their roof, those who want to retrofit their homes with LED lights, and also those who want to do dual plumbing retrofits so that they can make use of rainwater harvesting. There's a cocoa adaptation project, and I know there's a bit of an unfortunate play of words in Creole that happened in the other chamber, and I doubt my colleague, Minister of Agriculture, will ever live that down. But the government has planted over 11,000 cocoa trees on approximately 44 hectares of land throughout St. Lucia. And that initiative is really aimed at, and this is a joint collaboration between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Sustainable Development. It's aimed at improving land cover and soil protection while also enhancing livelihoods. We've targeted 130 farmers to date, but the other thing that we did was also distribute quite a few tree crops, mangoes and citrus, to act as cover for the cocoa plants while they're developing. So we believe in 5 years' time, there will be a significant amount of revenue that will be coming to these farmers. There's a project you will see in the estimates, Mr. President, called Ianola Management of the Northeast Coast, US $2.3 million, and that's treating the Ianola area as the area from Point du Cap in Gros-Islet to Babonneau, from Mandalay Point to Fordo in Denry. It's 25 communities. And what we're doing is looking very closely at the biodiversity and the ecosystems there to ensure that they're protected. That's also very important because that's where that Northeast Coastal Link Road is supposed to take place. And we want to ensure that that road does not impact on our ecosystems and our biodiversity. So there's a lot of collaboration between the consultants, the Ministry of Infrastructure, and ourselves to ensure that that project, which is home to things like the white-breasted thrasher and other migratory species, the St. Lucian iguana, leatherback and hawksbill turtles, that those ecosystems are protected. Mr. President, under the GEF, the Global Environment Facility Allocation 6, and this speaks to something I was trying to explain to Senator Joseph earlier on today, the GEF is making available to St. Lucia $5 million for its programming and environmental management. You will not see that reflected in the estimates because by the time that came on board, the estimates had already been produced. So we will have to produce a supplementary estimate to allow us to spend that $5 million. What we plan on doing with this is, one, something that is very important, DNA fingerprinting of our key genetic resources, the Fidelus and the toxin, which we believe has very important and very useful and maybe very economically valuable properties that we want to genetically fingerprint it so somebody cannot take it and exploit it and we don't get the benefit from it. Things like our St. Lucian race, our Jaco, make sure that we have the DNA fingerprint for that so we can identify it as being ours so that we can protect it and we can prevent people from exploiting it. And that is one of the things that we want to do with this. I want to talk very quickly about a program that's being managed by Jazz Romulus called the GEF Small Grants Program. That is an extremely good project. It is providing support at the community level to a lot of people in beekeeping and you name it. So far, it's created employment for 457 people at the community level. It's increased income by over $375,000. And the early results indicate that revenue generation from these projects, which are still in their early years, has already reached over $181,000, Mr. President. And this has trained over 1,715 people in a range of areas, from the maintenance of rainwater harvesting systems in Boutor, to natural apiculture in Choiseul, to good agricultural practices and organic farming in Millet, to product packaging, as well as financial management in Ticolo and Basse Joseph, which would resonate very well with my friend, the Minister for Education. Forestry Department, we've done our National Wildlife Management Plan, Invasive Alien Species National Strategy, management of forest trails and ecotourism facilities, and riverbank rehabilitation in Canel and Vieux-Fort. We're also looking at privatizing Christmas tree production. We believe that that's an area that private people can get involved with. So it's not just forestry to grow Christmas trees and make them available for sale come Christmas time, but people, farmers, can now grow their own Christmas trees and make those Christmas trees available for sale. It's an economic activity that we would like to see private people get involved with, and that is something that 4 farmers so far have planted seedlings, and we've distributed over 1,200 seedlings to farmers so that they can
Senator,
now...
you have 5 minutes left in which to
Right.
conclude.
Mr. President, to move very quickly, I think, you know, when I started for comparison of St. Lucia under 2 different
Just a
administrations.
minute. You,
So I'd like to evoke 36B just for clarification on one point.
36.
B. Clarification, sir.
For clarification,
Yes, sir. I'd like to clarify something that Senator,
is it something you said?
no, sir, Dr. Fletcher said, sir.
Oh, that's not what 36B is for.
So we have to,
36B is to allow a member who feels that he or she has been misquoted
I have been,
to
sir.
clarify.
I have been. So we have been. I just want to clarify.
No, but you speak after he has spoken.
Okay.
Yes,
Once I can do that, that'll be
yes,
fine.
you
sir.
can, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Chair, Mr. President, I want to end with a comparison of St. Lucia under 2 different administrations. Again, I spoke about, you know, the tale of 2 cities. Mr. President, when you speak about your capacity to govern and that the people will soon talk about the next preferred government, you have to look at your track record. And the track record of the previous administration is very clear for people to see. In their manifesto 2006, A Secure Future, they articulated a secure future development agenda for St. Lucia. And they said the UWP government will achieve high rates of economic growth, create 7,000 new jobs, introduce strong, there are 25 things that they said they would do. They did half of one. And you know the half of one they did? Reestablish a national development bank and create a unit trust company to encourage investment by St. Lucians. They only established a national development bank. So of the 25 things they said they would do there, they did half of one. So that's half of 25, 0.5 of 25. So do the maths. And you will say whether they get a A, a B, a C, a D, a E, a F, a U ungraded, a X didn't sit the exam. You'll decide what they did. Now, those are the people who are telling you that they're the next preferred administration and that they performed and we didn't perform. Now, let us look at the track record of the St. Lucia Labour Party as articulated in its Blueprint for Growth. 30 ways we will make St. Lucia better. 30 ways. Establish LEAP as a national initiative to create employment. Done. Introduce universal preschool education. We haven't done that, but there's an opportunity to do that. And you know why? If you were to look at the Economic and Social Review, you'll look at declining enrollments in primary schools. And there's so much capacity in primary schools. I invite you to go and look at primary school enrollment in there. As a result of, 1, universal secondary education, and also declining reproductive rates by St. Lucians. And we can use that excess plant in our primary schools to make sure we have universal early childhood education. And it's something I'll be talking to the Minister of Education about because I think it's a promise we can deliver on. Establish universal health care, we haven't done that. Start the immediate rebuilding of our country post-Thomas, we've done that. Reduce the rate of corporate tax, haven't done that. Reestablish STEP, we've done that. Reinstate PROUD, we've done that. Provide an employment tax credit, we have. Mr. President, if you go down the list, you will see that of the 30 things that we said we will do, we have already done 16 of them 3 years plus into our administration. And I can tell you, by the end of the 5 years, we would probably have done maybe 20, 22, 24 of them, which would be, in my estimation, somewhere way better than the 0.5 over 25 that they have done. So what I want you to do, Mr. President, is to use that and answer the question, who is better placed to move this country forward and who on their track record has shown a capacity to deliver? It's very, very simple. The answer is very simple. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Mr. President, I want to end by thanking the hardworking officers in my ministry who have made my success and the achievements I speak about here possible. People like Philip Dalsu, Dawn Louisi, Cletus Burton, Kirby Allaire, Verena Cauldron, Sheila Imbe, Pamela De Turville, Sharon Narcis, Betty Blanchard, Georgie Turville, and the staff of the Ministry of Public Service Information and Broadcasting. Sylvester Clozel, Deborah Shari, Caroline Eugene, Crispin Dovey, Judith Ephraim, Terence Gilead, Fazana Leo, Barrymore Felicia, Adam Stuse, and the staff of the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Energy, Science, and Technology. Vincent Hippolyte and the wonders he's been able to achieve at WASCO, completely turning WASCO around, and the staff of WASCO. McLeod Emmanuel, a young man in whom I'm extremely proud and what he's been able to do at Radio St. Lucia and take a radio station that was struggling and improve the morale of the officers, of the people working there. Improve the physical plant and now have Radio St. Lucia ranking up there with all of the others. And Dunley Ogis and the staff of Solid Waste Management Authority. The directors, the chairpersons of WASCO, RSL, St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority, ECTEL, NTRC. the NWSC, Grayston Louis Victorine, my administrative secretary, Cecil Charles, my research officer, who did a lot of the work that made this report possible, and Ekron Sexius, my support team that make my work so much easier. The Prime Minister and my colleagues in the Cabinet who give me constant support and encouragement, and who, again, allow me to achieve whatever little I've been able to achieve in my time here. My fellow senators, Mr. President, I have to thank you and everybody on both sides, all three sides, the whole circle for the support that you continue to provide. The staff of the GIS, Mr. President, who are here at this ungodly hour, and the same thing they did with the sitting of the lower house, and who diligently and faithfully ensure that these proceedings go out to the general public. Thank you very much for the work that you do. Mr. President, my family and close friends, and in particular, I always thank the two women in my life. And unlike other people, when they thank the two women in their life, they speak of the wife and the other wife. I speak of my wife, first of all, and I also speak of my mother, the two people who give me all of the support. That's not my final speech, not at all. All other well-wishers, I thank you sincerely for your prayers, for your encouragement and everything. Mr. President, when I listen to the senators on the other side, we're approaching the carnival season, and I was reminded of a song by Father Fox. All they did today was duck. They're ducking, everything they're ducking. The whole presentation was a set of ducking by them. Ducking the facts that this government is moving this country forward, that this government is delivering on the promises that it made to the people of St. Lucia, that this government has restored respectability and integrity to governance in St. Lucia, that this government has ensured that St. Lucia continues to have a good name in the regional and international arenas and is leading the charge on behalf of countries in the Caribbean and others, that this government is fulfilling the promises made in the Blueprint for Growth. And what we have here, Mr. President, is again using the carnival analogy, and to quote Benjai, is a phenomenal budget. This is phenomenal. Mr. President, I'm pleased and proud to support the Appropriation Bill 2015-2016.